Hello. All right, I just went on Zoom, Esther, so yeah, you know what, let me.
Hi, Elaine. Hi, Iris.
Hi, Iris. How's everything?
Everything is good, and you?
Good. How's Mimi?
She's good.
Okay. I have to call her. Just say hello.
Okay.
I'm on my cell phone because something happened to my iPad and I can't charge it.
Really?
Unfortunately. So we'll see. I just got on Zoom on my phone, so I'm not exactly sure how things work here.
Well, as long as you can put it in one place, that would be okay, I guess.
Yeah.
You have something to hold it?
Yeah, well, I have a thing too that I will hold also. I didn't I went today to the Apple store, but of course I didn't have an appointment, so I was hoping they would take pity on me, but they didn't pity me. So I have an appointment tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So until then, you'll be on your phone.
I'll be on. Thank goodness I have a cell phone that I can do this.
That's right.
Did you try a different outlet?
I use different outlets. I have 3 different cords. I mean, the cords work on my phone, but there's something wrong with the iPad. So we shall see tomorrow whether it's gone for good, whether it can be fixed. I don't know. I've been having trouble with it. I've had to hold it a little ways and, jiggle it and whatnot. So there's definitely been a problem, but now I cannot do it at all. So I'm going to put this down.
Hi, Edna.
Hi, Alan. How's everything?
Good. And you?
Good.
Edna?
Hi, Edna.
Yes.
Hi, I'm good. I can thank you personally for the time you gave us on the phone, and we followed your advice. My in-laws did not drive. They drove someone one day because they went to Hillcrest, and then they drove somebody, and then the same people drove them, and we all followed your advice. And as soon as we got home from our first shot, we got our appointments for the second one. So we're very, very grateful to your kindness to us. Thank you.
It was nothing. Were you able to get your shot?
We had our first shots last Wednesday, and we went to Canarsie, which wasn't worked out. We got there in 25 minutes, and it was very smooth, very well run. We were very impressed. They even took us early, and then we came home immediately per your suggestion, and we're eligible as of February 17th. We got them for February 27th. We're trying to get something earlier. It's not happening, but we have appointments hopefully for the 27th for the follow-up.
Right. Well, that's the big worry now, whether they're going to hold back for the second shots. But
and for the rest of you, what we're talking about, somehow I knew from another Zoom something at Hillcrest, Edna had gone to Hillcrest High School, and my in-laws were going. So I called her to get some kind of pick her brain, and she was extremely gracious, extremely kind, gave us all kinds of good information that we all listened. So now I have a chance to personally thank her.
I'm glad it worked out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We just appreciated your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have an appointment at Aqueduct, but not till next month.
Is that your first or your second?
First.
Okay.
It just opened.
The hard part's getting the appointment. The process itself, and based on anything I know who's gone, including us, the process itself goes very, very smoothly and quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I could have gotten an appointment in Utica, New York, but
oh my God.
But I thought that was just a little bit too far. I didn't think driving 5 hours for a shot was
Well,
ridiculous.
a friend of Greg's who lives in Albany, they were able to get something local. They know people who were going to Plattsburgh, which is 150 miles away.
Mhm.
God, it's
I
crazy.
heard of people driving to Florida to get
Right.
the shot.
Right.
But they're gonna stay there.
I'm not going to Florida for anything right now, that's for sure. So hopefully they'll still have something when I have my appointment.
Yeah. And we're hoping they don't use up all the supply on the first timers like you, and it's left over for us for the second shot.
Well, the second shot is already put away. The
Supposedly.
Cuomo wants to
Well, you
use
hear
it.
two different
Blanco wants it
stories.
released.
He wants to use that to for all the people who need the first shot. They were
Now
supposed
they're
to open
saying-
City Field, but they closed it. They canceled it.
Yeah.
Now they're saying that you probably do have a little bit more time rather than the 3 or 4 week waiting
Yeah.
time to
Yeah.
get the second shot, that it maintains its effectiveness.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
the company that was going to do just the one shot, they've stopped. They said they didn't get good results.
Yeah. Merck.
Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah.
And they
Johnson.
were complaining in the local papers that northeastern Queens got no facilities.
Right.
You know, so once it gets past like 188th Street, forget it. That's why we all end up having to go to.
Right here.
Who got the shot? Who got the first one? Okay, not
Not
bad.
me.
But me too. Me too.
Oh, you did get it, good.
Yeah, I did get it.
Oh.
And
I just want to alert people because they don't, one of the reactions they don't tell you, and a bunch of us have had it. And I ran to the doctor. Days later, you get a big red circle on your arm. It doesn't bother you or anything. And I went to the doctor and he said that they've been hearing a lot of that. You know, he gave me a steroid cream, but I just want to tell people like it's one of the side effects they're not telling us about.
It was me.
Yeah,
Ed.
I haven't heard
I had it.
And people who have had COVID have reactions to the vaccine. I have a couple of friends who were in bed for a couple of days, but they didn't get COVID, you know, they don't get COVID from it, but they had a reaction. So
Sheila is good. Sheila is what happened with the driver, Sheila?
I was wondering.
You're
the-
muted.
You're muted, Sheila.
I may yet get a ride with her. She's coming here.
Okay, hopefully she will join you.
Yeah, she's on her way here.
Let me mention one thing to Iris. Okay, it's a private conversation, but you can listen. If not, I need to call her again. So Iris, what I sent to you is missing one line,
Yes.
which is Ashivenu.
No. That one is there. It's the Orech Yamim one that I don't know.
Orech Yamim b'mina, Smola Osher v'chavod, Adonai chafetz leman sukot. It's after Agba in the morning. It's not going to take very long, guys, to everybody. I'm just working on many things at the same. Orech Yamim b'mina b'smola Osher v'chavod. It is there. It is.
Oh, I have the little book. I have the little one.
Okay,
So
I will get you a copy here. Okay, it's not the full. I will try to find a different version. Okay.
or just take a picture of it and send it to me.
Okay. But you are.
That's easier then.
Okay. Okay, I did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And we will begin very, very soon. Okay.
Well, that's interesting, Iris. You're saying this, the smaller prayer book leaves things out?
No, I don't know which version you have, but you should have it there.
Iris is muted.
Yeah.
I have a little art scroll. It's a little one, so maybe it's just a different page in the book. I mean, I know, you know, the Eitz Chaim Chi line and, you know, those 3 lines. It's just that other one that's stuck in the middle.
Okay.
Okay, I'm getting quiet.
No, it's okay. You have it.
Beth Yesha Koch on Saturdays Haftarah was beautiful.
Okay. She's good, yes. Okay, hi everybody. So good to see everybody. And we are going to begin working today on the Amidah. And as I mentioned to you before, we will begin with the weekday Amidah because the Shabbat Amidah is a shorter version of the weekday Amidah, and I want you to be familiar with the Amidah first. We are not going to begin with the books, so you can leave them for a little while. I'm going to share with you a few pages from Grishaver's book, which I sent to you. It's a book that many people use it for Hebrew school, but is actually excellent, especially the first part. And I'm going to work with you today on a few pages here. Okay, I'm going to share. I send it to you, but I'm going I like to share the screen and to work a little on a few things here. Okay. I am a big believer that before we go to the actual words of the Amidah, I want you to get the structure of the Amidah and some background information. We'll try to do this today. And if we have time, we will begin with the text. So the Amidah has 19 blessings. The weekday Amidah has 19 blessings, and each of the blessings have a name. Again, this is the name that the rabbis gave to the blessings. They are different blessings. So the first one is called Avot, the second one is called Gvurot, Kedusha, Binah, okay? And if you really want to open the book, we can do it very, very quickly. You can open the book on page 291. And you see that it says the first one that is Avot, they call it our ancestors on the left part. You see there on page 291. On page 292, they call it God's saving care. We call God's saving care. In traditional Siddurim, they call it Gvurot. Then on top of page 293, holiness, here Kedusha. And then on page 294, you start seeing all the names: knowledge, repentance, forgiveness, redemption. The next page, healing, times of abundance, gathering of exiles, justice, end of wickedness, righteous, Jerusalem, messianic hope, hear our voice, and then so on. So you have here in this page, which I will send, I send this to you, but if you want me, I will send it to you again. You have the 19 blessings. Here, Grishaver brings the first praise. Yes, section 1, praise. Section 2, petition. I try to see if I can move it. How can I move this? How can I move this without messing things? Here, petition. Then you have personal requests. Beginning with personal requests, blessing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Then national requests. Yes, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Yes, you see there the arrow around. And then section 3, Thanksgiving, which is the conclusion, the last 3 prayers. We're going to see that different Siddurim, like our Siddur, will divide the middle 13 blessings a little different. They will give them different names, but the bottom line is that there are 19 blessings in which we have the first 3 and the last 3 are common to every single Amidah always. Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat, holidays, Yom Kippur, every single Amidah, morning, evening, begins, has the same first 3 and the last 3. So 1, 2, 3, 6, 17, 18, and 19 are the same. During Shabbat, we have only one middle blessing, so the total will be 7, and during weekdays, we have 13 in the middle, okay? So any questions so far? Okay. So now we are going to go a little more on the background. And this, again, I like to beg you not to be distracted by the little graphics that look silly. The material is good stuff, simple and good. So I'm going just to read it. I want to make be sure that you are familiar with it. So I'm going to ask someone to read. If you can, Iris, read, okay? How sacrifices became prayers. Or anybody, yes, if you need to unmute yourself, Iris.
You want me to start at the temple? Okay.
Yes.
Back when Israel was first its own country and kings like David and Solomon ran the show, there was only one Jewish temple, the temple in Jerusalem. Shuls, synagogues, and neighborhood temples came later. Jerusalem was the one and only place where Jews could go to worship. While they could come every day, just as we can, the big crowds came 3 times a year on the pilgrimage festivals, Sukkot, Passover, and Shavuot.
Any question? Again, I just saying, he's a little silly because he's writing for young people, but all the information is true. We didn't have shuls, especially in the time of King Solomon. Okay, let's continue.
In the temple, the major form of worship was sacrifice. A sacrifice was a lot like a barbecue. A family would bring a sheep or a cow or some other animal, bird, or even flour, and the Kohanim, the priests who ran the temple, would cook it on an open grill, which was called the altar. With most sacrifices, after the food was cooked, the Kohanim and the family would eat most of it together, burning a little of it up as God's portion. While all this was going on, people would say their prayers, thanking God for the blessings which they had experienced in their lives and asking God for the things they felt they really needed.
Okay, again, simple but true. Very, very simple. You need to imagine a person, let's say a woman gave birth. So she brought a gift to after, her recovery, brought a gift to the temple. A sheep, or, if she didn't have the means, brought like a turtle dove, or if not, she brought flour. Doesn't matter. She brings a gift, and that gift is some of the sacrifices. All this in the book of Leviticus are either share all to the priest, or are usually shared between the priest and the person who offers the sacrifices. And a few sacrifices are being burned completely on the altar, especially called Olah. Olah is a, what's the translation of Olah?
Going up.
Elevation offering is, the entire sacrifice is burned in the altar, but most sacrifices are called shlamim or zevach, or like the Passover sacrifice, the same thing. You bring the way it works is a person brings the sacrifice to the Kohen. The person who brings the sacrifice can slaughter the animal if he wants, but usually the Kohen does it. And then the Kohen receives the blood and brings the blood to the altar, sprinkles the blood into the altar. They skin the animal, the hide goes to the Kohen, like a little, gift to the Kohen. And some parts of the animals are being eaten by the Kohen. Some fats are being burned on the altar, and the main portion is being given to the person back home and eat it. Okay? Any questions about that? All that is in the book of Leviticus. There are many tractates in the Talmud that describe all the sacrifices. Some of the things we study, throughout the Talmud. This was the way that people worship in the temple. We have the main sacrifices are in the Bible. For some occasions they were required. Like if someone transgressed a commandment, let's say that you didn't know that was Shabbos and you lit a fire And then you say, oops, so then you need to bring a sacrifice if the temple exists. It's called a hatat. So for some occasions, sacrifices are prescribed, but people also could bring any sacrifices they wanted just because, to say thank you. And they brought the sacrifices, and at that time, maybe a declaration was made or okay, and this was the way that people used to say thank you. The word sacrifice in Hebrew is
Korban.
korban, and the root of korban is kuf reish bet, which means closeness. This was the way that people had to come closer to Hashem. Okay, so please, Iris, continue a little more.
3 performances every day, 4 performances on holidays. While sacrifices happened all day, every day, the worship experience in the temple was built around 3 major services: a sunrise service called shacharit, meaning dawn, an afternoon service called mincha, meaning rest hour, and an evening service called aravit, meaning evening. On Shabbat and festivals, an extra service called musaf, meaning added, was also celebrated.
Excellent. The only thing I'm going to correct to Grishaver is that there was a sacrifice in the morning and one in the afternoon called shacharit and mincha. There was no sacrifice in the evening. What happened in the evening is the leftover of the parts that were not burned during the day were burned on the altar during the evening. Okay? Now, I don't know if you can imagine how an altar looks, but I'm going just to show you a picture very, very soon, so stay with me. If I can, I'm going to show you. Okay. Excellent. This is how the altar looks. Okay, you see that there? It's like a ramp. You see the ramp there, the triangular ramp? The priests were walking with the animals there, and they threw the animals in the square that was there at the end of the ramp. You see there?
Rabbi, if you stop sharing your screen, we can see the picture bigger.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay, you see this is how the altar looks. And it has a ramp. So the priest walk with the animals. First, they sprinkle the blood at the bottom of the ark, where and here in this part, here around this part, they sprinkle the blood, and then they walk with the animals, and whatever needed to be burned, they burn on the fire in the altar. Okay.
Okay.
It's not a lot of fun, but because this appears so many times in the Torah, it's important to be familiar with what happened. It was an entire process, and since I'm just studying it for my Daf Yomi, there were 4 services in the temple. The first one was slaughtering the animal. Exactly the same way a shochet does, the same way the kosher animals are being slaughtered. Exactly the same way. Most people knew how to slaughter animals. It was not like a unique profession by the priest. Most average people knew how to do it. Then a priest, and only a priest, receives the blood in a special vessel. If I can show you the vessel, I will show it to you. I owe you I don't want to keep you longer, but like a special gold vessel, and the blood was there, received another priest or the same priest, they walked through the altar, which was very close, and then the blood was sprinkled in particular areas of the ark. And that provides the atonement and everything that was part of the process. This took place in the temple in Jerusalem. Okay, any questions? Excellent. Okay. Iris, please continue. The rise of prayer.
Sometime before 586 BCE, Jews felt that they needed a local worship experience too. Going to Jerusalem 3 times a year just wasn't enough. Some kind of local worship place, a kind of synagogue, was beginning to evolve. In 586 BCE, Israel was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, and all Jews were carried away in exile. It was probably during the 70 years of exile in Babylonia that prayer without sacrifice got its big push. 70 years later, King Cyrus of Persia conquered Babylon, ruled the known world, and let the Jews return to their land. Under the leadership of Ezra the scribe and Nehemiah the prophet, the Jews returned to their homeland, rebuilt the temple called the Second Temple, and set up a new Jewishly governed state, the Second Commonwealth. While sacrifices were restarted and people still barbecued and prayed with the Kohanim, the local synagogue now became an important place for daily prayer and 3 times a week Torah study. In 330 BCE, Alexander the Great, a Greek, took over Persia and ruled the known world. Later along came the Roman Empire and defeated Greece. They ruled the known world, including Judea, the name of the country set up in the Second Commonwealth. In 70 CE, Jerusalem was again destroyed and the Second Temple went with it.
I'm going to stop here. Again, this is Grishaber. I just need to say, I just love this person. One day I look forward to meeting him. I think he's a nice hippie who lives in Colorado or in the West. I think everything that he does is good. And he gives here a wonderful summary of what happened. The other thing that maybe he could have added is that in the temple, besides sacrifices, other things took place. And one of them were the Levites were singing songs when people were coming. They were standing on stairs and singing songs, psalms. And also the priests, they blessed the people with the priestly blessing. So we have the Mishnah tells us what happened in the temple in Jerusalem in terms of verbal activity. Not too much, but maybe the 10 Commandments were read at the beginning, and confessions were made, and the priestly blessing was recited. Yes? And what Grishaber is telling us is something that we know, is that especially in Babylon, after the first exile, the people started gathering and doing something. We don't know exactly what. They studied Torah, some form of prayer started to develop. I want to talk briefly, it's not related to the Amidah, but about this idea of commonwealth. When we talk, the first commonwealth is the first independent Jewish state from King David, King Solomon, until the destruction of the first temple in 586 BCE. That's called we call it the Commonwealth. At that time, there were 2 nations. One is called, in the south, called Judea, or Yehuda, and one in the north called
Israel.
Yes, Israel. The Assyrians came in 771 BCE, and they exiled the northern 10 tribes, and they got lost. These are the famous lost 10 tribes. And only remained a tiny Jewish commonwealth called Judea, which was the leftover of the big kingdom of King Solomon. The center, the main town of this Judean kingdom was Jerusalem. Other important towns of Judea were Hebron, Bethlehem, and Beersheba, probably. Yes, and a little around Jerusalem. You need to imagine, not huge. Okay, this is called a tiny place called Judea. Okay, then Nebuchadnezzar came and exiled and burned the temple and sent all these people to Babylon. These people did not lose their Jewish identity as opposed to the 10 tribes. And because they came from Yehuda, from Judea, how did they call these people?
Jews.
The Jews. That's what we call the Jews, because they came from Judea. This is where the name Jews come. So this, because they came from Judea, and then they came back and they retained their identity. Okay. And when they came back, they rebuilt the second temple, and that became the second Commonwealth, which is another independent state. Basically, the second Commonwealth started with the Maccabees in 166 BCE and lasts for 100 years until 66 BCE when the Romans take over. But in that time, even before and after the temple takes place, there is a second temple. And then I'm talking about the Commonwealth is an independent Jewish state that lasted for 100 years from the Maccabees until the Romans came. And then in the year 70 CE, the temple is destroyed. We go into a long exile that lasted almost 2,000 years until the year 1948, in which we came back to Israel, to the land of Israel. And so this is called, many people call it the third Commonwealth, which is the one we are right now. It's the third time that Jews have an independent state. Okay, this was not related to prayer, but I felt I wanted to talk about the word Commonwealth. Any question about the prayer or sacrifices or anything so far? Okay, excellent. Okay, Iris, we have a lot to learn.
Okay.
So,
Prayers take over. After the destruction, a few Jewish scholars, whom we call the rabbis, met in a small city called Yavne, more or less where Ben Gurion Airport is today, and tried to figure out how to reorganize Judaism so it could survive without a temple and without a capital. Their discussions, when spliced together with earlier discussions and those which followed, became a work known as the Talmud. Among the things the rabbis decided was that tefillah, prayer, would have to function as the replacement for avodah, the sacrifices. Avodah really means work or service. They decided to consider tefillah as avodat al halev, the service of the heart.
okay, that's a little mistake. It's avodah shel halev, but it's okay. Okay.
Okay. Amidah.
Amidah. It's a mistake. Okay. It's
Okay,
not
all
perfect.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm reading it what I'm reading, sorry.
Yes, it's good. I'm just correcting.
Okay, in particular, the rabbis decided that a chain of brachot would be said 3 times a day as a replacement for the daily sacrifices. This chain of brachot was called by 3 different names. HaTefillah, which means the prayer, because it was to be the prayer which was replacing sacrifice. Ha'amidah, standing prayer, because these brachot was said silently in a standing position. Shmona Esrei, the 18 brachot, because in the beginning, this chain was 18 brachot long, 18 brachot long. Later in this book, you'll learn the story of how a 19th bracha was inserted as an emergency measure. Today, even though we call it the Shmona Esrei, the chain still has 19 brachot in it.
Any question? Again, I like the way he summarizes things. The only thing I would like just to add to what Grishaver says is that the person who was in charge of Yavne, of that city close to Ben Gurion Airport, maybe a little closer to what we call Rehovot, but he was pretty close. So the main person responsible for that transition in one of the most difficult times of the Jewish history was Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, he realized that the temple was gone, that he was not going to get the temple back, and either he fixed it or Judaism is gone forever. So he and the leaders who follow him, Rabban Gamliel, the people who have the authority, the Jewish authority, gathered and they established Judaism the way we know it today. The way we practice Judaism today is not a biblical Judaism, it's more a Judaism that was adapted after the temple was destroyed. That's we call it a rabbinic Judaism. That's why, you know, when you study Talmud or Mishnah or Jewish tradition, oral tradition, you get Judaism. So if someone were to get in the year 300, will get a better picture or closer to the way we live Judaism than if someone were to go to King David's time. where, we will have sacrifices and blood and knives and turtle doves and a different system, okay? But one is based on the other, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and the rabbis of Yavne, their main challenge was to convince the people that what they were doing was a smooth transition, or as smooth as possible, from a sacrificial system. And this is what we call the prayer, and this is the center of Jewish worship. I say that again. The center of Jewish worship is the Amidah. The Shema Israel already existed independently because it's a commandment in the Torah. People used to say it in the morning and in the evening. Everybody independently, whenever they wanted. They didn't have this concept of minyan. They didn't have the concept of praying in community until the time that we are discussing it now. Okay, any questions?
I want to ask you about the prayer in Babylon. Do we have any record as to what that was?
We have one record which I shared last time, and this is in the book of Daniel, chapter 6. What we learn is that Daniel went to the upper chamber in his home and kneeled facing Jerusalem, the way he used to do it from long time ago, 3 times a day. That's all we know from the Bible. In the book of Daniel, he went to the upper chamber facing Jerusalem. He kneeled and offered prayer the way supplications, the way he used to do it long time ago. That's all we know. It's one verse in the book of Daniel, Sam. But from that, we already know a few things. First, 3 times a day. Second, facing Jerusalem. And third, that is not something that he invented, but is something that was done from a long time ago. We don't know how long, but apparently it was a practice that existed. Okay?
Thank you.
But you did not ask the question, but I will put it in your mouth. Sam, did we have in the time of Daniel the text of the Amidah that we have today? Probably not. That text was established in Yavne by the rabbis after the destruction of the temple. Okay? Let's continue a little more. Okay, this is something I like a lot, and it's called How to Dance the Amidah. This is something that people ask the rabbi all the time. And let me ask Alan if you would like to read How to Dance the Amidah. I may interrupt a little, but hopefully it's going to help, okay?
How to dance the Amidah. In many ways, the Amidah is like a dance. It has certain rules, certain steps, and certain movements. The Amidah is said facing towards the location of the temple in Jerusalem.
Okay, this is something that we all know, but we should not take it for granted. The Amidah is being said
Silently.
One second, facing Jerusalem. So what happened if your temple is, okay, let's say at Hillcrest, if you are sitting on the bima and it's the time of the Amidah, you don't face the congregation. You turn around and you face the ark, which is slightly where Jerusalem is, okay? Please continue silently, yes?
Silently, with one's feet together.
I don't know if you knew that. The Amidah is being prayed with the 2 feet together. You put the 2 feet together, yes?
One begins by taking 3 small steps forward.
Okay. So let me just interrupt here. I don't know if you can see my feet here, okay? Oh, I made a mistake. Okay, just bear with me. I should not have done this. Okay, Manes, you see me, yes?
No.
No, we cannot see you.
This is for me, for being too smart. For being too smart. Okay. just give it one more time, okay?
I thought we started by taking 3 steps back, not 3 steps forward.
Yes. That's what I wanted to say, and I wanted to show you, but I'm not going to play anymore with the camera. So who said that we go 3
Elaine.
steps backwards? Yeah.
Elaine,
The reason we want to go 3 steps backwards is so we will be able to go 3 steps forward. So basically, the Amidah, before we daven the Amidah, we go 3 small steps back, and then we go 3 steps forward. It's basically, people explain it religiously, it's like the presence of God is so overwhelming that we go back here like Moses at the burning bush, but eventually we need to approach God. So we go 3 steps forward, and we are ready to approach God. Okay, so let's say that you are standing in a particular, mute yourself, Sam, if you can. If you are standing in a particular place, you go 3 steps back, and then 3 steps forward. You put the 2 feet together. Okay.
Ron.
Yes.
At what point do you say the line Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Agiti Hilatecha?
Immediately after you bring you go. It's a good question. It's a good question. I usually do it when I do the 3 steps and the 3 steps back. I do it at that point, but probably the right answer is when you are just, after you do the 3 steps, when you are just facing, before the Amidah. Okay?
Yep.
Now I'm going to ask Alan to continue reading, and we're going to come back to some of these movements, but I want you to have them all together here. Please continue.
One bows at the beginning and end of the Avot.
So at the beginning and at the end of the first blessing, we bow down. And the way we do it, I'm sure many of you know it, but some of you don't. We bend our knees, Baruch Ata Adonai. Bend, bow down, and when we say the name of God, we straighten ourselves. And then at the beginning, and then at the end of the blessing, Baruch Ata Adonai Magen Abraham. Okay? That's the beginning and at the end of Avot. Okay? Continue.
One rises up on one's toes 3 times during the Kedusha.
Okay, when we say Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tsebaot, Meloch Olam, we are going to learn on that, but this is an introduction. Then when we say Baruch Adonai, Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo, and when we say Imloch Adonai Leolam, Eloai Tzion, Ledor Vador Hallelujah, we rise ourselves. Okay?
One beats one's breast during the Slach Lanu.
Slach Lanu, Avinu Ki Chatanu, Mechalonu Malkenu Ki Fashanu is like what we do on Yom Kippur, is a confession, and we do it during the Amidah. Okay? Continue.
One bows at the beginning and the end of the Modim.
We do also, again, another bow in blessing number 18. We're going to, when we go there, we're going to explain it or go again. Please continue.
One bows 3 times at the end of the Amidah, left, right, and forward.
Okay, maybe you saw the rabbi doing that, or other people. You, wherever you are, you go 3 steps, small steps back, and then you do Oseh Shalom Imbromav to the left, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Israel, and then you stand. Okay, we are going to go, when we analyze the Amidah, we are going to do that here, but here Grishaver is telling us how to dance the Amidah. Okay, let's continue a little more.
The saying of the Amidah cannot be interrupted. If one stops or talks, one is supposed to start over again.
Okay, I'm going to clarify what he says. I don't like to tell people what they should do. okay? And I don't like people to get punished. But the most important point that we need to know is that the Amidah is the most important prayer and should not be interrupted. Should not be interrupted. If you want to interrupt one prayer, this is not the one to interrupt. It is, the rabbis explain, like talking with the king. So let's say that if you talking with the king, you know, you are not going to use the opportunity to do something else because it's going to be disrespectful. The same when it comes to the Amidah. Because it is a silent prayer and nothing more, you know, many people cannot tolerate silence for too long. People like to do something else, okay? But it's not a good idea. The good idea is to daven the Amidah or to replace it with your prayer when you face Hashem at that moment. And that's why some people, I'm not going to mention their names, but some of them are in this call, they take their time to daven the Amidah. And even after the rabbi, my Amidah is longer than many of the people in the shul. But there are people who it takes them more time. So they should continue davening the Amidah regardless of what's happening in the shul. Okay, this is, the rabbis explain, even if a king comes and says, how are you doing? You do not interrupt. Okay, and certainly, you get the idea. Okay, now again, what people do practically is depends on people. You know, there are people who they get the text message, they need to check it. Okay, but I like to encourage you not to check the text message during the Amidah. If you need to check the text message, so you can check it during Torah service, which is important. Don't take me wrong, but it's not as important as the Amidah. Okay, you are laughing, Beth, but it's true. Okay, or whatever you want to do. Okay, if you want to take a candy from your parents, or you want to anything else, try not to do it in these minutes of the Amidah. Okay, which is again the most important part of the prayer, and I'm just talking exclusively here about the silent Amidah. I'm going to ask to share again, please.
In the morning and the afternoon, the Amidah is repeated out loud after it is said silently. This repetition is called Hazarat Hashatz. It is not repeated in the evening.
So here at Hillcrest Center, we repeat it in the morning. In the afternoon, we do something called the Eiche Kedusha, in which we do the first part out loud, and then everybody continues silently. It's a lenience you can do, not a lenience, it's another way to save a little more time and not to impose on people. But, you know, I go for Mincha now to Young Israel, and they do say the entire Amidah silently, and they repeat it. The entire process of saying the Amidah silently and repeating in a place like Young Israel takes 11 minutes. Okay? And this is the same when we do it at Hillcrest without repeating, it will take 7 minutes. So, you know, it's not that we save a lot of time, but because we do usually Mincha and Mariv, you don't want to add more to people, so people will continue to come to shul. Okay, but I'm saying that in the evening is only a silent Amidah. In the morning we do the repetition, and during the repetition is that we say the Kedusha. We are going to study all that once we start with the text itself. Okay, this is like a general introduction. Okay. Okay, we can do a little more studying here. I am going to ask Aviva if you would like to read. Okay.
Why does one face Jerusalem during the Amidah? The following text, 1 Kings from 8:44 to 48, is part of a prayer which Solomon said before the people on the day that he announced his intention to build God a temple. The rabbis use these verses to learn which way to face during the Amidah. When your people go out to war against their enemies, while they are going in whatever direction you have sent them, they should pray to Adonai, facing the city which you have chosen, and in the direction of the house which I have built to your name. When they sin against you, God, and there is no person who doesn't sin sometimes, you are angry at them and deliver them into the hands of their enemy, and they repent. And then later they turn back to you with all their hearts and soul, and they pray to you in the direction of the land which you gave to their fathers, and to the city which you have chosen, and to the house which I built in your name. Please listen to their prayers and accept them.
And now they are going to use this prayer, this text in the Tanakh to learn about the Amidah. Okay.
Keep reading.
Yes.
In the Talmud, Brachot 30a, we have given a very specific set of directions about where to face during the Amidah. A blind person who cannot tell direction should base him or herself on 1 Kings 8:44 and direct his or her heart towards God. 1 King 8:44 says they should pray to Adonai. If one is not in the land of Israel, one should face towards Israel. This is learned from 1 Kings 8:48. And they pray to you in the direction of the land. For the Jews, the land equals Israel. If one is in Israel, one should face towards Jerusalem. This is learned from the same verse, and to the city which you have chosen. If one is in Jerusalem, one should face towards the temple. This is also learned from the same verse, and to the house which I built to your name. Why is the Amidah said silently? When we say the Amidah, we are imitating the example of Hannah, the mother of Samuel, a matriarch whose prayers to God were answered. She gives a good example of how to ask God for additional blessings. In 1 Samuel 1:13, it says, Hannah spoke in her heart. Only her lips moved. Her voice could not be heard. Why is the Amidah said with one's feet together? In the book of Ezekiel, we are told that the ministering angels stood around God's throne with their feet together. And their feet were straight. The rabbis decided in Brachot 10 that when we petition God in the Amidah, we should stand just like the ministering angels. Why does the Amidah begin with 3 small steps forward? Basing themselves on Genesis 18:23, the story of Abraham petitioning God to save Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham approached, and on 1 King 18:36, the story of Elijah petitioning God's help in showing up the priests of Baal, and Elijah approached. The rabbis learned that if you want God to answer your petition, it should begin with an approach. They define an approach as 3 steps.
Okay.
Why does one bow at the beginning and at the end of Avot, but not at the Baruch formula in other brachot?
Okay, I owe you these answers. Okay, we're going to learn on that. Why does one bow, the one that is there? Why does one bow at the beginning and the end of Modim? Aviva.
Why, where?
Why does one bow at the beginning and at the end of the Modim?
I don't see it. What, on the very bottom in the beginning?
back.
No, the top.
Go back a little.
Go back. I don't have it in front of me. I'm looking at the screen.
Ah, okay. You're looking at this. So it is on the screen.
Yeah, move.
Okay, the fourth.
Okay, now I see it. Why does one bow at the beginning and the end of Avot, but not at the Baruch formula in other brachot? Why do we rise up on our toes 3 times during the Kedusha? Why does one beat one's breast during the Slach Lanu? Why does one bow at the beginning and at the end of the Modim? In the 2 Samuel 16:4, we find this phrase, I bow down, let me find favor in your sight, Adonai, my king. In the Targum, an important translation which explains the text, a word from the same root as Modim is used to express the idea of bowing down. The rabbis therefore decided that giving thanks is expressed by bowing.
Okay.
Why does one bow 3 times at the end of the Amidah, left, right, and forward? This is the correct way to leave the presence of a ruler.
Okay, again, it's telling us, I'm going to stop just for a second sharing, it's telling us that we do not know exactly how to behave with God, because God, didn't come and tell us, this is what I want you to do. But so the rabbis learn many of these, I would say, many of the they learn this etiquette from what they knew, and they knew from being with other kings. Again, I'm just saying this because it's going to come helpful later on. This is the expression. This is, you know, if you ask a rabbi or if you ask a person in the Middle Ages, who is the most important person that you know of, the answer was the king. Today will be the president, okay? But let's say the king, okay? So I explained this to children in Hebrew school, but the same it could be for adults in shul. Let's say that President, Biden invites you to the White House, and first of all, you would like to get dressed nicely. You're not going to go in with jeans. Most of us will wear a suit or will be nicely dressed. Okay, the same thing is when we come to shul. You will be there early enough so you can talk to the president when he is ready to receive you. You are not going to come into his face, into the president's face. You are going to keep a little distance, yes, which is the right thing to do. Eventually, if you need to say something, let's say you are with a group of students and someone needs to say something, we are going to go a step forward and start talking. And you will talk slowly. You want every word to be heard and pronounced correctly. It would be a bad idea for you to chew gum, when the president is there, or even a candy, in your mouth. If you have like a teacher who is taking you to see the president, you will receive instructions what to do. The teacher will tell you, no chewing gum, take your hands out of your pocket, do not play with your fingers, okay? All the rabbis learn all that also for the Amidah, okay? They ask the question, which is not very, appropriate, but I'm going to say that, what if someone needs to fart in the middle of the Amidah? It sometimes happens. What do you do? So the rabbi says, if you can, you try to hold it. Now again, usually it's not a good idea to hold farts. But if you were to be in the presence of Biden, you might just hold yourself for 5 more minutes. Okay, this is what they are asking. Imagine that you are in the front of a king. Okay, if you need to yawn, you are going to cover your mouth. The rabbis, they address all these issues. They say you need to pray in a place that is clean. You're not going to talk to God in a place that is surrounded by filth. And again, and when you are going to leave the presence of the president, okay, and the president is still looking at you, okay, it may be inappropriate to turn around and give your back to the president. So usually the president is going to leave earlier, so you don't have to give the back to the president. But if not, you just move a little back so not to offend the president. The rabbis knew exactly how was the etiquette with kings. They knew it from their experience and from other people. And even though you haven't dealt with kings, I am sure you understand what I am referring to. You can imagine yourself, you can imagine the president, you can imagine, going to see a senator, and this is Hillcrest Jewish Center sharing not good news. I'm already letting you know. Joe Levine passed away, for those who are not aware. Ethel Levine's husband. So that is the message that is there in the diary. So many of these things are being learned from, and we are going to learn also. I'm going to share with you that from the way we write a letter to a potential donor, we are also going to learn how to daven the Amidah, because it's going to be very, very similar. When you ask a request, when you ask, usually, when you go in front of the president, and actually I will tell you because I go to AIPAC to speak to the congressman. And they teach us, I mean, by now I know, but I teach other people how to talk. There are simple things. Miriam can tell you, Sam can tell you. You don't enter into the office and says, "Hi, help Israel." That's not the way to do it. You say, "Hi, my name is Manes Kogan. I live in Jamaica State. Thank you so much for receiving us, Congressman." And then you start saying what brings you there. And when you are done with bringing your point, you say, "Okay, goodbye." No, that's not the way you do it. You say, "Thank you so much. We'll leave you now," whatever we're going to say. There is a way to do things. And many of these things are going to be very helpful for us to understand how we approach God during the Amidah. Okay? I have a few more minutes. I like just to see where we are here. Alan, let me ask you just to read a little more. Okay? Sorry, Aviva, why can't the Amidah be interrupted?
Why can't the Amidah be interrupted? Even if a king says hello, to him he should not break the Amidah to answer. Not even if a snake winds around his ankle should he stop.
Okay, so this is Mishnah Brachot. Please continue.
This applies only to Jewish kings who would understand. For non-Jewish kings, he may interrupt.
Okay, I'm going just to share with you something that I find it very interesting. Okay, I'm going just to ask Aviva just to read one more paragraph, and then I will share something, and then we'll stop for the day.
In the morning and the afternoon, the Amidah is repeated out loud after it is said silently. This repetition is called Chazarat Hashatz. It is not repeated in the evening. In the beginning, only morning and afternoon services were mandatory. Ma'ariv was optional. When the Shatz, an abbreviation for the word Shaliach Tzibur, the community representative, repeated the Amidah, and a person said Amen. That person fulfilled the obligation to say the Amidah. Repeating the Amidah out loud meant that even people who couldn't read or couldn't learn it by heart could still fulfill this mitzvah. Because evening prayer was optional, it didn't require repetition. Later, when evening services became mandatory too, they still didn't add the repetition, probably because the pattern was already set. In some congregations, they use a shortcut. The first three brachot are read out loud together, allowing for the communal kedusha to be said the first time through. Then everyone finishes the rest of the prayer silently. Then everyone finishes the Amidah alone.
Excellent, Rishaver. That's exactly the way we do it at Hillcrest in Mincha, but not, and in Musaf, by the way. Now that we shortened the service because of COVID, that's what we do in Musaf on Shabbat and in Mincha during weekdays, but not during the Amidah, where we do a full repetition.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
About when you do the Heicha Kedusha.
Yes.
And aren't you supposed to go back to the very beginning?
Yes.
Rather than to continue the way he.
There are different opinions. My suggestion or my recommendation is that you do not chant the first part and then you go back to the beginning silently. Yes.
Oh,
there are other rabbis. I will give you the name, for example. People that I respect a lot. I think Rabbi Skolnick from Forest Hills Jewish Center and Rabbi Miles Cohen. They could prefer a different option, and that is everybody doing the first blessings out loud. Baruch Atah, the first blessings out loud, and then you don't have to go back. Personally, I prefer that you let the leader do the blessings, then you do the Kedusha, and you go back to the beginning of the Amidah, which is maybe 1 more minute. Okay, so that is my. If you ask your rabbi, this is my option. Okay, so we will stop reading here. I like to talk a little about this idea of the king. When the king talks to you, you don't interrupt. So the rabbis made sure that the issue about the snake is the rabbis asked the question, and this is a snake that is not life-threatening snake, because you are not supposed to give your life to daven the Amidah. There are 3 occasions that you need to give your life, but this is not one of them. So a life-threatening situation you should really interrupt your Amidah for a life-threatening situation. Okay, let's say that someone says, there is an earthquake and everybody needs to leave. You say, no, I'm not leaving because I'm davening Amidah. No, you need to leave because your life is more important. But leaving our lives aside, there are really no other situations that will warrant us to interrupt the Amidah. Because even if a president of the United States were to come, he would not threaten our life if we do not reply. In the times of the Middle Ages, if he didn't say hello to the emperor, he could be very upset. So you needed to interrupt your Amidah. But if a Jewish king says hello to you, you do not interrupt your Amidah. Okay? I know it sounds strange, but this is just so you understand this idea of the Amidah and how God is above any ruler that we could know. And I'd like to share an experience, something a video that you can get online. Again, it's not exactly the same, but it really brought good memories for me. And I think I share this with you, Miriam, when we discuss. And this is about who's called Pollard. Arnie Pollard is called? Pollard. No, what's the name? What's his first name? Pollard, the spy who went back to Israel.
Jonathan.
Jonathan Pollard and his wife, they went back to Israel. He left prison, stayed 5 years in America, and he made Aliyah maybe 1 month ago. I don't know if you saw the video of Pollard and his wife arriving to Israel. I'm not going to talk about the controversial part of Pollard, that I will let someone else do it. But that video, they arrived to Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu is waiting for them at the foot of the plane. I encourage you to look at YouTube the video, okay? This is Jonathan Pollard and his wife going down the steps from a private plane that brings them down to Israel, and Prime Minister Netanyahu is standing at the foot of the ladder where they go down. Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to shake their hands and to greet them, and he makes the Prime Minister stop. He says, stop, and he goes down and he kisses the ground. That's what Pollard and his wife do. It's very, very moving. I invite you to look to watch that video. Now, again, I'm not saying that kissing the ground of Israel is more important or is as important as the Amidah. But the reason I bring in that is because usually you would not leave the prime minister of any country waiting for you. You will do things first and then you will do what you wanted to do. But in this particular case, he became religious Pollard and his wife, and that's what they did. So I'm just sharing this because it's an example on how this, what you will call your religious obligation, gets a little conflict with the political etiquette and how you play with both of them. So if you can see that video, that would be will give you an idea. But again, we are going to discuss more. What I want to do now is a general introduction to the Amidah. We'll continue a little more next week. And then after we finish with a little more of introduction, which is going to be helpful, then we are going to start analyzing the text using the Mincha Amidah in the Siddur. We are going to go blessing after blessing, and we will be able to work on this prayer, which is the most important prayer in the Siddur. Okay, 1:05. I am done with my with the shiur. Any questions before we continue? Yes, Edna.
The taking 3 steps back during the Amidah, it's a similar thing when you do the Kaddish? at
Yes,
the very end?
Yes, yes, yes. It's actually, when you say Oseh Shalom, you do the Kaddish, it's the same thing, yes. In the Amidah, there is a reason why you do it, is you leave the presence of the king. Why you do it in the Kaddish, I will do a little more research. Okay, maybe the Kaddish took it from the Amidah because it's also at Oseh Shalom. That would be my guess when you say Oseh Shalom. Any other question?
I just wanted to share an anecdote about the presence of the king. I was at B'nai Jeshurun a few years ago, and the Rabbi Roli said, we're going to be visiting the mosque, and I want you to dress appropriately, not the way you dress at BJ.
Okay, I find it yes. I won't add anything to that, but I think it's a wonderful point. It's a wonderful point because people, when someone needs to go to and find out when you have non-Jewish people coming to shul, and by the way, at Hillcrest people dress very, very well. Okay, in Argentina they don't. That's why BJ is like a little summer of Argentina. People go with jeans. People will go with tank tops. We'll go different ways to shul. Interesting, but that's the way I grew up. But even those people know how to go to dress when they need to go to church, or they are not going to go. So I think what Rolly mentioned. Rolly is a rabbi from BJ. I think it has, it says here you feel at home, but when you go to the mosque, just dress more appropriate. What I think Sam is saying without saying it is that, the same way we dress when we go to church or to mosque, when we go, we should dress when we come to shul. I mean, not worse. And I think it's a good point. And I like just to add, to conclude, that the reason someone could be asking, Rabbi, why all this is important? Isn't the important thing the way you feel or what is in your heart? Why is so important if we stand, if you go the 3 steps, if you go the 3 steps forward, if you go in your toes, why is all that important? The clothing, the way you dress, and it's not the most important thing. God knows what is in your heart. I think it helps you get your mind in the right frame of mind to enjoy the experience in a way that you can relate to. It really prepares you. It's like, again, preparing yourself to visit the president, preparing yourself to visit an important person, and think about what would happen if you were to get a letter that President Biden, I'm not talking about God, President Biden would like to see you or welcome you in the White House. And imagine everything that you will do, including going and do your hair and doing your nails and find a nice dress and making sure that you are there on time and that you are not late and rehearsing the words that you are going to say. All that I can bet you will do. I'm not saying even, President Biden or Vice President Harris or anybody, or Senator Schumer or Speaker of the House Pelosi will invite you to talk to them in their office. That's the way you will prepare yourself. So the Amidah is a way to talk to God. Okay, and some of these things we learn from the etiquette of other similar things. Okay, I would like to send you. I encourage you to print the short version of Grishaber. I send it to you. You have it there. The short version of Grishaber is only a few. We are going to continue a little more because something very, very cool comes in the next 6 pages, which I like you to see also. And then, yes, and I don't have too much to add. Okay? Be well. See you later.
Oh, Rabbi,
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yes.
Is this afternoon's class at 4 or 5?
5.
Okay.
In February, we'll begin at 4. Be well, everybody.
You too.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rabbi. Thank you.